Before we get into any data today, I need to say something nobody in your organization has said out loud yet. The displacement that everybody says is going to happen from artificial intelligence has happened. It may not be exactly what you've heard in the latest headlines or from some of the other commentators on YouTube and other platforms, such as big theories like post labor economics, right? And it's not happened specifically to people who may even be watching my channel, who work in tech or sales adjacent or product management. It's happened to folks specifically in the rung below you if you're senior or middle management, which relates fully and directly to my refinery theory, which I have provided on Substack in full detail, but also made a video here. I'll link it to this one so you can check that out as well. It's happened in general, and nobody has sent out a memo for that. So I'm going to make a presentation for you today to pick up some of these details so you can start to understand why these things are true, that AI is not coming for your job. It already took the one that's below you. The data, I am sure, will transform some of your thinking around this. So everyone has been asking when AI does come for their job, what will that look like, and when exactly will that happen? But I think ultimately that's always been the wrong question. The right question is what has already changed while you are focused on that wrong question or wrong premise. And the answer is in the hiring data, right? The displacement has largely been attributed in areas that are obvious, right? We're going to talk about that in general, but the rung below you on the ladder, I want to focus on. And I want you to sit back and ask yourself this direct question of what it costs you to not be aware of this as we are continue to learn about it. 67%. 67% of entry level software engineering postings in the last 2 years, or specifically over 23 to 24, by Stanford's reporting alone and ADP payroll data, have attributed that 67% of entry level software postings have completely disappeared. So this could be due to over hiring. This could be due to post pandemic work and how badly managed companies have been able to make it from one place to the next since the pandemic. But this is still a very real reflection on what is happening in the market. This for me is not a think piece, right? This is not a prediction. This is literally watching real time numbers affect the market that we're talking about today. Uh, what I wanted to highlight here as well. Here's the part to me that matters, I think, a little bit more. Same field, right? Same AI tools, same company in some cases. Workers between the ages of 22 and 25 saw a 16% employment decline. Experienced workers in the same exact roles saw no comparable decline. Some of them actually grew. I think in my own career, I could say I benefited. I have benefited since artificial intelligence has hit the scene, and I have been able to use it in mass as an architect and engineer. AI did not hit any particular field, it's hitting the bottom of all of the fields. And that is a different problem entirely. It's part of the refinery paradox that I've talked about. Again, go to the link in my bio and check out those videos. But 16% decline proves that this is a real attributable uh, piece of information that we do need to discuss on a larger scale. So Harvard has confirmed at a firm level with 280,000 companies, 6 quarters of data, right? At firms that adopted generative AI, junior employment fell 9%. Senior employment at those same firms kept rising. One technology, one company, two completely different outcomes depending on where you sit. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern, right? And again, using this data, we're matching it up with the refinery paradox and able to say, as we are not pulling anecdotes or using people's stories from social media, we are using hard data to understand what is happening truly in the market. So careers used to work in a pretty interesting way. Let me explain something that most people don't think about because it works so smoothly and never really notice this, right? This is how careers got built. Seniors leave, opens a new role in general. Mid levels move up, that opens a role. Juniors get hired. That fills the bottom of the rung. New graduates enter, the cycle continues. Okay. Visually, I think you're understanding from the visual that there is a relied upon cycle. Millions of people who built middle class lives through this particular chain, and it only required one thing: a functioning bottom rung, an entry point to the ladder for anyone who needs to take that next step. So I want to take a glimpse here to understand what is happening here and what it looks like in the chain today. So seniors that are staying because AI handles what juniors used to do. Mid levels absorb the rest. No juniors getting hired or rarely hired. AI is cheaper and already trained. In a lot of ways, I know you've heard other anecdotal evidence that AI is becoming more expensive than certain positions. I want to be frank about that. I'll film more content in the future as well. There's no way that the artificial intelligence tests that are being pushed from Silicon Valley, being pushed from Manhattan, are indicative wholly of what most companies would need. When you want to think about an example of how artificial intelligence should be compared to any particular outcome, right? Or what type of service or product could fully affect a business on a large scale and bring the results that most people would be using that product, you need to try to compare it against Microsoft Excel. Okay. That's my example. Microsoft Excel was actually never intended to become this full production like use of a product. It was very much for a prototyping work to build upon an idea, to flex it out, and then be able to translate it into a more permanent extract, transfer, and load process, or ETL, right? But what happens, especially with accounting and finance, is that many of these particular Excel books have just been held over for generational causes from one thing to the next. And so you need to hold on to these for finance and regulatory purposes. But because you're having an issue where you can't just delete these things, you can't just move on without properly using them, you'll find out that many people suffer from being able to adopt any new technology. So, artificial intelligence, if you want to talk about how it is applied in such a universal way, that needs to be your example. It needs to be something that is comparable to a Microsoft Excel for you to really get your point across, right? But again, if AI is being it is becoming cheaper through inference costs itself on the baseline. So again, we'll go over pricing and what that looks like in another video, because I think from an architect's point of view, from a governance and compliance point of view, pricing, FinOps, whatever you're doing, there are some tricky scenarios, and I do think it's important to talk about that. Um, but here again, what is happening now very clearly spelled out that the latter is suffering from some transformations here. And I want to be clear, right, about what the data does not say, and where I am going to be different from most people who are covering any of these stories. This is not an economy wide collapse. Okay. There's not an aggregate unemployment that is becoming overwhelming right now. Because again, aggregate employment, according to reporting, which again, we'll go over another video at some point, because I think data quality, data science is suffering because of political staleness right now. Healthcare supposedly is adding entry level roles. Skilled trades are adding roles. The BLS is saying that software developer growth is still up through 2033. The claimed work is that these are targeted and specific to the outcomes of artificial intelligence, specific fields, specific rungs. If I told you the whole economy was falling apart, I'd be lying to you, right? What I can tell you is that the fields that built the most reliable middle class career path for the last generation are the ones on the ramp to closing the fastest. That is a more precise statement, and it is certainly provable by the data at this point. The fields that we're talking about are software and finance, um, data in general, communications and media, customer service and operations. These are not obscure industries. These are four sectors a degree used to reliably unblock for most Americans or most people moving here to the country to take up this work. So now let's talk about how everyone is watching who is not entry level, because this is where it gets personal, right? Your organization hires fewer juniors over the last couple of years, largely provable statistically, which means you're absorbing more work. There's no junior pipeline, meaning that there's nobody being developed into the mid-level replacement roles that you'll need 2 to 3 to 5 years from now. The next role that you'll watch develop has fewer people already replacing you. You are not watching a problem that belongs to somebody younger. You are standing on a floor that just lost a level below it, right? Uh, Let me tell you why this keeps happening and why it's going to keep happening. AI does not disturb or disrupt the top structure. Go back to the refinery paradox here. Go back to see my other videos, talk about the refinery paradox. It captures the entry point, okay? Whoever controls the entry point controls the pipeline. In the oil era, that's largely my metaphorical phrase for artificial intelligence, standard oil, consolidation, all that stuff. Again, check out the videos. In my oil example, whoever controls that entry point gets rich because uh, who gets wealthy are not the ones who found the oil, the ones who own the refineries. Everyone needs to get their oil processed to get that done, and that's called paying the rent to the refinery. Ultimately, what we're watching in the labor market right now is the same structure. The entry point is the refinery, and it just got purchased, right? Um, so, in general, I'd say here's a question I want you to start sitting with. Think about the roles that sit directly under yours right now, right? Think about your own career. Are those roles being filled? Are there a change in the pattern? Are they being refilled when they turn over? Or are they quietly becoming the things that tools handle? The organizations that figure this out before their leadership team does are the ones that will have a functioning talent pipeline by 2028 and 2030. The ones that don't figure this out will have an expensive senior team and nobody to hand that to. Um, Again, the refinery paradox report is where I go further into the structural argument behind everything I do cover here. It's free to read. You can go to the link in my bio, check that out. And I'd like to hear more about what you're dealing with and what you're seeing. Drop your industry, what you do, your title in the comments. Tell me, is your organization hiring for these junior roles? Are they developing them still at the same pace? I actually read all the comments in the data, so I do appreciate any of it. Till then.